Okay, my loves, I have something game changing to share with you. We are going back to the original topic of decluttering, and we're merging it with everything that I've learned over the past few years with neurolinguistic programming and neuroenergetic encoding, the subconscious mind, all of these amazing things. So, if you have been feeling stuck, overwhelmed, exhausted, I'm hosting a free live session that's going to bring you so much freedom. I'm calling it Declutter for Abundance: How to Create Space for More Money, More Energy, and More Alignment. And no, this is not just about like the home. We are talking about clearing energetic blocks that are draining you in the core 4 areas of your life: physical clutter, so the shit that's suffocating your space and your energy; mental clutter, so all those spiraling thoughts that keep you up at night, overthinking, all the things. 3, emotional clutter, so guilt, shame, resentment that's weighing you down. And number 4, schedule clutter, so overcommitting, people pleasing, wasting time on shit that just doesn't matter. We are taking a look at all of it and we are clearing it all. So join me live. This is happening on March 4th. It'll be at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you're going to learn how to make space for more money, energy, and alignment in your life. This is going to be a really deeply impactful, shifting conversation, shifting time. I'm going to be live with you, so we can be doing chat, hot seats, whatever comes up. I am there to support you. Also, when you sign up, so just signing up for this free session, you are automatically going to get sent the clutter clearing blueprint. It's going to get sent straight to your inbox right after you sign up for this free session. So you can actually start clearing chaos today before we even go live. So you don't have to wait for March 4th. I do not want you to miss this. This is the stuff that changes lives, okay? So go to allycasazza.com/sessions and get your spot now. I said that weird. allycasazza.com/sessions, SESSIONS. And I can't wait to see you there. Go get your spot. Hello, beautiful. Welcome to this episode of the Purpose Show podcast. This is going to be our first episode out of what I plan to be 4 in a series. And this series is going to be intense. But I want to say a couple of things before I even tell you like the title of the series, even though I'm sure you saw it before you hit play. Before I say anything out loud, in case you can't tell from the title, this podcast episode and the series that this is beginning is going to contain very sensitive topics. I'm going to be saying some specific words that are not child-friendly, and I'm going to be discussing topics that can induce confusion and fear in kids. So this is really like for your ears only, women, mamas, adults. This is for your ears only. And then the other thing that I want to say to you is, we can't control how people perceive what we do and say, but we can control our intention and the way that we present things. And we can control that, we are doing those things, that we're saying things and saying things in a way that we believe is, right. And so I want to say before we get into this that my intention, like my pure intention for this podcast episode and this series, is to educate people. It doesn't mean that I'm fully educated and know everything and I'm going to say all the right things and lay it all out perfectly, or not, miss any bases that maybe should have been covered because I'm, highly imperfect. But beyond that, my deeper intention with this series is to make other women feel less alone. I want to help those of you who have been victims of what we're going to be talking about. I want to help you feel seen and understood. I want to let you know that you're not crazy, that these things happen all the time, that it's systemic, that it is pretty standard, at least here in the States. And it's not okay. And that your feelings, your emotions, your trauma, your struggle, all of it is valid. And I'm here to energetically support you as best I can. And then the other intention that I had with this series is encouraging other women to use their voices when you're going to the doctor, when you're going through anything that has to do with your feelings, your body, anything, that you speak up and that you use your voice. So this is part of my story, and this is something that I've had in me for quite some time. I sat down at my computer for about 3 hours last year, so summer of 2024, and this episode just poured out of me. I was definitely having a lot of emotions. One of the main ones was anger. And I just, underneath anger is always sadness. And that's, it's always true, but it just felt extra true with this particular circumstance that I'm going to share with you in a minute. And so this is a lot. This is a lot. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. But there is good in it, and we're going to create good from it because we are the hub of life in this universe, and we do create life, and we also create our reality. So I'm hoping that this episode series creates a new reality for women and sparks something in those that listen. I hope it inspires you to share it. Even if you block out the title on social media, that's okay. But just encourage people to buckle up and to listen because it's extremely important. So that is the intention that I'm coming into this with, and I just wanted to communicate. Okay, so summer of 2024, there was news that broke that triggered this conversation, and the news was that feminine hygiene products, so tampons, pads, etc. Almost all of them, I think there was like 1 or 2 brands that people had found were owned privately still and did not contain these things, but they contain toxic metals. So metals like lead, arsenic, cadmium, they're being found in feminine hygiene products. These are known cancer-causing toxins. These are like they're lethal. And for many of us, like, we knew about this before it kind of officially broke. Like, many of us women have known this, that they're not safe for years. But I think just seeing how this news was so mainstream, and for me, watching so many women like really just kind of fall to their knees in this sense of betrayal that this news caused. Like, it was like this gut punch realization that women's bodies have always been treated like something to manage, something to regulate, and something to experiment on. And we're going to get into that deeper. This is nothing new. It's just wearing a different disguise. But I think that just, God, like, not only are our cycles, is our blood like taboo, not welcomed, like seen as gross, something that needs to be stopped and plugged up, like with a fucking cork, basically. But that cork is designed to kill us. It's unnecessarily full of toxic metals. And it's like I said, it's that gut punch realization, like, we're not safe. And in many ways, I've unpacked this a lot in my own life over the past few years because of the assault that I experienced in the beginning of 2022, which was a huge part of my mental breakdown and all the things that I've, been pretty open about sharing with you all. But with that, like, the feeling of it's not safe, like, men are physically stronger than women, and for the most part, and that design is beautiful, but many men use it in they use it in an ugly way to hurt and to control. And historically, anytime women are stronger in an area or in an era, men, again, historically, men want to shut it down. They want it to stop. They do harmful things to basically put women back in the place they want them in, which is beneath them. And of course, I please don't be the person to message me like, not all men. No, not all men, but it is always men. And so I want to get into this. During this time, last summer, when this news was coming out, it was just really heartbreaking for me to see so many women who truly did not know. They're just, they were processing like how many decades they've been inserting these feminine hygiene products into their bodies, unknowingly, like increasing their likelihood of cancer and all these things happening. And it just, like I said, just felt like such a betrayal to so many of us. I ended up like I had a lunch date with a really good guy friend of mine. I made this friend pretty quickly when I moved out here. We stayed really close. And he's just been a really good, loyal friend. He's like the friend I call when I just want to relax, maybe go out and like have some pizza and wine or watch the game at, the sports bar and just talk and just not have to talk. But when we do talk, it's light and it's funny. I'm always laughing. Like, he's a very dear friend of mine. And another thing about this friend is he's actually very, very liberal. And I don't say that to bring politics into this conversation because I'd actually really like to keep it out and stick to the facts and stick to the point. Although politics have brought themselves into the conversation with women's bodies, but that's another thing for another day. But I say that about my friend because he is just very, very vocal about his beliefs and his stance on political issues. And I've always really admired that about him. Even the, couple of times that maybe he said something that I just felt like maybe he was a little extreme in my opinion. I recognize that it's an opinion and I respected that he's coming at it from a place that felt very educated and really grounded. And he was firm enough to take a stance. I've seen him speak up in situations where I would normally have like dimmed my light and not wanted to rock the boat. Even though I strongly disagreed and felt like what was being said might be harmful, he's always stood up and said something. And I've just grown to respect him in that way and felt very safe with this man. And so this day I went to lunch and we're sitting there and we're talking, we're having a good time. And then something came up where this friend of mine is raising two daughters. And they're getting to the like prepubescent stage. So I think they're like 11 and 10 or something like that. And we were just talking about things and he was expressing things about like worried about like when they start their cycles and that he's not going to know and like what products do you use and all this stuff. Like we were just having a good conversation about that. And I was expressing to him like, oh, like here's the good brands. Like this is what I use. This is what Bella uses. And this is like what I would recommend. Just don't, go with anything else. And he's like, oh, why not? Like, why can't I just go to Target and like get this? And I was like, well, you certainly can, but there's toxic metals. There's, I started going down the whole list and I noticed that his energy changed, his body language shifted. And because this friend of mine is very opinionated and he has a hard time, like myself, actually hiding how he really feels about things. I could just very much tell like it was like irritability or something happening. And I was confused because I was giving advice that he asked for. And we're talking about this issue that like, you know nothing about. That's why you're asking me. And it's like something that I deal with every 30 days with my cycle. And like, I just was confused. I was like thinking like, what did I do something wrong? Am I missing something? Like I just kind of noticed the energy shift, but I kept talking and then he rolled his eyes and I stopped and I was like, what? And he just was like, no, it's just, I don't do fear mongering. And he said it like super annoyed and rolled his eyes. And I was like, fear mongering, like, okay, I understand what fear mongering is, but how is this what that is? And he was like, just like the like, oh, like everyone's out to get me and like victim mode and like, and I put my hand up and I was like, hey, hold on, this isn't that. And I gave examples of fear mongering, like in, the media and whatever. And I said, what this is proof that women's health is just not a priority. It's skewed. And I started going down all these things that we're going to talk about in this series. But he rolled his eyes again, super hard and really slow, and said, okay, like that. And when I tell you that this just felt so out of character for this friend in my life, and beyond that, I immediately got panicked, emotional, and I realized, like, looking back, it was like the safety that I had felt in that friendship was pulled out from under me. The rug got ripped out from under me, and I was just falling. I felt insignificant. I felt like he was demeaning me. I felt unimportant, and it felt very, very similar to how I have felt over and over and over again. And it reminded me of when I was having my babies and giving birth and some of the things that happened there, which again, we're going to get into in just a second. But long story short, I ended up saying, something like, you know what? I need to just go be alone. I think I said I'm sorry, which I shouldn't have said I'm sorry. But I said something like, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave you with the bill for this lunch. Since I got it last time, it should be fine. And I am going to go. And he was like, oh, come on. No, don't do that. And I just was like, nope, I'm going to go. And I left. And we did not talk for a few days, which is a whole other thing. I do really feel like he should have been the one to reach out to me. But I processed and I grieved. I grieved the safety in that relationship. I grieved my perception of this person in my life. And I grieved all the things that it brought up. And then I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to this friend and texted him the PDF. Because no one mails letters anymore. I texted him the PDF. And it basically it was what's in this series. The emotional weight of this issue, and how it was so important that I clear my throat, that I say my piece, that I communicate this to him, not just for my own sense of like self, and like, you guys know how much I've worked through breaking the pattern of self-betraying, like making sure everyone else is happy and okay, no one's feelings are hurt, even if it means that like I literally feel like I'm not okay, like I'm dying. As long as no one else is, then we're good. And this was, like I said, last summer. So this was really at the time where I was really flexing that muscle and really wanting to work on that and getting better and braver with it. So this was huge for me to do that, to speak up, to leave, and then to write a letter. Like I couldn't just I needed to just educate him and explain it. And especially because not just for me, but for his girls. And so the fact is, although there's problems with what this friend said and how he said it and the way that he treated me in that moment, and it has deeply impacted our friendship. We're not really, haven't really seen him or hung out. A couple of awkward text exchanges, but that's pretty much it. But I want to express that, like, men, even the good ones, don't understand this issue. They don't understand this reality. And I just feel this like collective exhaustion in women from explaining why our lived experiences shouldn't be up for debate. Being treated with an eye roll or a sigh or a look or words directly like I'm dramatic, like what I have experienced is not valid, labeling it as something that it is not, putting words in my mouth like is absolutely unacceptable. And bottom line, women's lived experiences are not up for debate. So the biggest things that this situation brought up in me and like flooded like subconsciously, oh my gosh, like I know I went into like fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm so proud of myself for not staying there and acting out of how I normally would, which would have been freeze or fawn. Fawning is like basically just people pleasing so hard no matter what, um, which has gotten me in serious danger and harm in the past. But I chose to speak up and say that I was not okay, and then flight. I'm just gonna leave and I'll deal with it later. And that was a much better option. But the biggest thing that this brought up subconsciously was my births. I became a mom very young. I was 21 years old when I had Bella. And in Bella's birth, God, like my water broke. I went in and I was so like nervous, but I was just like trying to do a good job. And the hospital was overrun. The maternity ward in my hometown is really great now, but that hadn't been built yet. So it was still this old one and it was far too small. It was old. It was just like not good. They were understaffed. I was immediately treated like a fucking inconvenience from the second that I walked in. Nobody spoke up for me. Brian was, with me, but he was obviously very young too. We're the same age. So we're just a couple of 21-year-olds that are super like nuanced, so naive. Like the way we grew up, we knew nothing about the world, nothing about anything. And we were both very religiously programmed and brainwashed. So we didn't even really know to speak up for ourselves or like that was even an option. I'm in labor. Like I'm, like not actively in labor, but my water had broke. I'm nervous. I'm freaking out. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that there's even a baby in my uterus. Like, and so I get in there. I'm super stressed. They're treating me like such an inconvenience. I'm going to graze over this because I have a lot of birth stories, but the IV, like they sent the worst nurses. They couldn't get my veins. I had preeclampsia and that they were watching and they like were really wanting to get the baby out. So I went into labor at the right time and they were really glad that, because with preeclampsia, you need to just have the baby. And so that was good, but I was so puffy and swollen. They couldn't find my veins. They bruised me. They bruised my hand. They bruised my wrist. They bruised my elbow pit. Like they bruised the shit out of me. I was crying. I was in so much pain. And I was like, I don't think that IV is supposed to hurt this bad. And they were just digging for veins. Like they were so ruthless. And again, I felt like I was such an inconvenience. They wanted to give me Pitocin to start my labor because I had sat in there for about an hour and a half and not started contracting. That is ridiculous. That is simply not the way a woman's body works. You go into labor when you need to go into labor, and an hour that is not a thing. I didn't speak up for myself because I didn't know, and they gave me Pitocin. I really didn't want to have a C-section. I was very scared of that. And so I also was, very like against drugs because I had heard like, oh, you're like weak if you get drugs, which is fucking insane. And so I was like not taking drugs. So I'm on Pitocin having piggyback contractions for 17 hours. They finally did an emergency cesarean because Bella's heart rate was dropping and I wasn't doing good. I fought for control. I fought for my rights to be treated like a person. Like I don't know why I'm saying I fought. I didn't actually fight, but inside I was like, this isn't right. I'm not feeling it. I feel like a nuisance. I feel like a problem. I don't feel like they care. They didn't. I was dismissed every step of the way, everything I wanted, asking questions about the Pitocin, asking questions about the process, asking questions, but it was all just dismissed and they just did what they wanted to do. As somebody who has experienced, I'm going to say trigger warning, okay? As somebody who has experienced rape, the other thing that got to the closest feeling to that was Bella's birth. I felt dismissed. I felt powerless. I felt taken advantage of. I felt like they robbed me of something that was mine. And it was so awful. They pulled that baby out of me and I ended up like not the anesthesia wasn't working right. I felt the cut. Like I started having a seizure on the table. Like I was such a mess. And they took Brian and the baby. I asked Brian to please stay with me. He panicked, didn't know what to do. He went with Bella. I felt abandoned. I felt dropped. I was so scared. It was extremely traumatic. Leland's birth was a completely different experience because I was a good, compliant patient. I let them do a scheduled cesarean. I was still very dismissed throughout my pregnancy, but I was pretty compliant. So it was very smooth. Hudson, same thing as Bella. However, if somehow possible, more traumatizing. If you're watching the video, I think like my eye is literally twitching. Like I'm just recalling this. It's so stressful. I labored for 3 days with Hudson. I was determined to have a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section. And thank God I did not. That's not the point. I did need to have a C-section, but the way they treated me, they were so annoyed with me. I was, again, such an inconvenience. The doctor wheeled in this computer and showed me a chart about the likelihood of my survival if I tried to have a vaginal birth after 2 C-sections. And while, of course, there's science and there's facts, like I appreciate the knowledge and the whatever the intention might have been, but it wasn't that. Like his intention was clearly to scare me. So talk about fear mongering. Like the way that he went about that was so aggressive and so unnecessarily harmful and hurtful. I ended up in a C-section where I had to be completely put out. So I wasn't even awake when Hudson was born. And then Emmett, my last baby, I was fine. It was perfect because I agreed to a planned cesarean and to have a tubal ligation, to have my tubes tied. Everything was smooth and easy. And yes, you could argue that it was smooth and easy because I was doing a C-section or that I was doing what they recommended, but that is not my point. My point is not birth types. My point is treatment. My point is a lack of respect. My point is abuse of women and a dismissiveness in the system. This wasn't me versus the doctors. It was a system that's been in place for centuries being played out again. The more I asked questions, I wasn't even pushing back. The more I just asked questions or said, this is what I would really like. I don't really want to do that until we need to. I would like to wait and see what my body does. It was like I was completely dismissed, the more resistance I faced. And women throughout history have been trained that your instincts, your voice, and your body are not yours, and they don't matter. And it's crazy to me because it wasn't always like this. There was a time when women's bodies were seen as sacred and they were trusted and revered, worshipped even. And so that's what I would like to do is I want to go back to where it all began. And that's what we're going to do in part 2. I wanted to just open up this conversation and share a bit of my experience. I'm glazing over it like crazy because of time. But if you've ever felt dismissed, if you've ever felt like you were an inconvenience, if you ever felt like your pain, your anything with your annual checkups or anything that you felt dismissed, and they make you feel so often like there's great doctors out there. I've seen them myself. But a lot of the time they make you feel like you're crazy. They make you feel like you're dramatic, and it's such a mind fuck. It's valid. It happens all the time. I wanted to open up this conversation, and then in part 2, we will get into how pussy went from sacred to shameful and really entered the era of control, where it comes from. We're going to talk about the patriarchy, and we're going to get into it. And then in parts 3 and 4, we're going to look deeper into like, okay, like what now? So I hope that this at least made you feel seen, like maybe like it's not just you. This is very vulnerable for me. I'm like keep shifting in my seat because it's uncomfortable for me. I don't like talking about things that can be really like controversial about something that a point I'm not trying to make. I don't mind controversy, but I do when it's not that's not the point I'm trying to make. So I'm hoping that anyone that wouldn't have done what I did or wouldn't have wanted what I wanted can see that it's not about that. It's not about the discussion about the type of birth or like the choices or the numbers of the safety issues. It's about how I was treated. It's about how women are treated. You do not have to look far to see loads of stories. They're just everywhere of women being harmed medically, of being dismissed, of not being listened to. And I think we can see, no matter what your beliefs are, that women are not in charge of their own bodies and that men repeatedly throughout history and today want to own and operate women's bodies. And we are just dismissed. This is insane sexism. It is patriarchal. It is damaging. It is so not okay. And I want to speak on this. So I will see you in part 2 and we'll go from there. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you so much. If you would like to share this episode, this series, before it starts with your followers, with friends, family, please take a screenshot. Send them the link to this episode. You can share that. Tag me if you do share. I would really love for other people to see like, oh, this is a thing. People are listening to this. What is this? What's going on? Interesting. It would really mean a lot to women of the world for you to help share this and help. I'm putting myself out there by talking about it. I would love for you to put yourself out there by just sharing the image, sharing the link. Thank you so much, my loves. We're together in this. I'm locking arms with you. I got you. We got each other. And we'll go deeper into this in part 2.